My name is Matthew Garvey. I'm one of the founders of Four Corners. In January next year, it's our 30th year of operating in South Africa, and in Australia a little bit less. I'll be doing a lot of the talking tonight. I'm here with my colleague Paola, who's been with working with Four Corners and me for nearly all of that 30 years. So you've got a fair bit of experience here tonight. And I think that's important given that immigration is an ever-changing type of situation in that the law often changes, and we've seen some big changes over the years with reactions to global financial crisis, obviously then with COVID and different law changes by the government over the years. And it's really important to find out the best solution for you and what you're trying to achieve, and then making sure that whenever you act on that you double check that it's still the case in terms of the legal situation. But I certainly think in this situation, experienced practitioners who know the system and understand the law is really important to advise you in the best possible way, because there could be more than one way for you to approach this. There could be a really good way and there could be a not so good way. So I think it's really important just to understand what your options are. Okay, let's keep moving. Okay, is that not moving? Hold on a sec. There we go. Okay, well, as I said, welcome. It's early in the morning here in Australia. In fact, it's too soon for a beautiful sunrise like this. It's still dark here, but we wanted to make it a good time for people in South Africa, Europe, and the UK. This photo's taken from, well, in fact, I took this photo. It's a holiday town a couple of hours north of Sydney. And it certainly does have beautiful mornings there. So hopefully we can show you not only some nice pictures, but also give you an idea of what's involved with what you're planning as well. Okay. Same spot from the other side at the beach. So certainly lifestyle is a reason a lot of our clients are moving to Australia. But there's more to it than just that. And certainly there are a lot of beautiful places in Australia, but there's more to it than just holidays. So we'll try and focus on some of that information here today. Okay, a little bit of an introduction to Four Corners. We've been one of Australia's leading migration specialists since 1996. And we do have offices in both Australia and South Africa. Nearly 30 years of operation has made us see a lot of changes, but has also given us a lot of wisdom and a lot of confidence about how to navigate changes and how to find the best solution for our clients. We do have a very successful rate of success with our applications, and we tend to rather tell clients if we think there isn't a solution for them up front, rather than waste their time or ours, because we really want to be able to present tailored solutions to our clients that will achieve what they're looking to achieve. I think it's really important, and one thing we've learned, or I've learned over the 30 years, is that no matter how similar an application is in terms of the visa subclass or the occupation involved, all applications are different, and that's because there's different people involved, and I think it's really important that we always remember that there are people are part of this process, and we're here to make this process or journey easier for you. And it's a huge step for all of you if you do make it. Probably one of the biggest steps you'll make in your life, and you have to do it, but certainly we can try and smooth that pathway as much as possible, and provide you with the best advice. Okay. Australia's always been a country of migrants, and that's been really important for Australia because we don't have a large population. We're coming up to not even 30 million yet, and we need migrants to keep economic growth and to provide the skilled workers that we don't have. And so tonight we will be focusing on skilled migration for a lot of it, and skilled migration is visa subclasses 189, 190 and 491, which you might have heard of. That's the points tested application, and I'll run through that in a bit more detail later. We'll also have a chat about employer-sponsored migration. That's where you've got a job offer, and that covers visa subclasses 482, 494 and 186. And we'll also touch on family migration, which is partner and parent visas. Now, of course, there are a lot more different types of applications that you can make to Australia, but these are the main ones we think you'll be interested in. But certainly we're very happy to talk about different types of visas if they're going to be applicable to you. Now, there's been a lot of change and disruption, particularly since COVID started, and I know that seems a long time ago now, but it certainly hit the immigration world pretty hard. Following that, there was a full migration review conducted in Australia, and strategies released to try and get the most benefit to Australia out of the migration program. Okay, let's have a chat about some recent history. Some good, some bad, but let's get into it. On the 1st of July this year, the Department of Home Affairs increased application fees significantly. Essentially, in all my time doing this, it's pretty it's unprecedented, this increase. Most visa types were increased by 20 to 25%, and some up to 150%. So that's significant amounts of money, and came out of nowhere. In fact, they just delivered the new fees on the 1st of July with no warning at all. So that's something to keep in mind. If you'd been looking at an application earlier and you'd worked out the budget, things are different now. So you'll need to make sure that you get the up-to-date fees there. I think that's also a really good example of how the goalposts do move in immigration, and although it's not our role to tell people when to apply, certainly once you've made up your mind that you want to, the sooner you do it, the better. Because by doing that, you can avoid not only fee increases, but you can avoid law changes as well, and then still achieve your goals. There's a tougher approach by the government at the moment to student visas, and following on from that, graduate visas, where you now have to be under 35. And partner visas and parent visas, the time they're taking to grant visas is worrying, and the processing time could certainly be improved there. Now, skilled migration, the program, it's very, very competitive, and there's still more people interested than there are visa places available. So although over the last few years there's been a focus on health and education occupations. We're seeing this slowly change, and we are seeing more occupations being invited now, and that's really positive because over the years, we've always seen a wide range of occupations, from accountants to tradespeople, so electricians, bricklayers, mechanics, all sorts of people getting visas. But then we saw a narrowing of the program, but we're hopefully seeing that open up again currently. And now employer-sponsored visas, where you do actually have a job offer before applying for your visa, they're playing a really important role in Australia in filling skill shortages, and are taking up a bigger percentage of the total number of visas that are issued each year. So we're certainly going to touch on employer-sponsored visas this morning. Okay, so some updates for you at the moment. Again, the new visa year started on the 1st of July. Which means that there are more places available, and again, with skilled migration, a wider range of occupations being invited. At the moment, the state governments have not yet opened again, but we'll hopefully soon see state nomination open for visa subclass 190 and 491 visas. And again, hopefully we see more numbers coming through that program, because traditionally we've helped a lot of people in that area, and during COVID, when the focus was just on health and education, it became a little bit more narrow, but we're keen to see that open again. There's also a huge interest and demand for the skills in demand visa, which is the 482 visa. Now that's basically a work permit. It's a three-step process, and it leads to a temporary residence visa for up to 4 years, and it does have a pathway to permanent residence as well. In that three-step process, the first two involve the employer in Australia more than you as the applicant. So the employer has to become what's called a standard business sponsor, and they then have to nominate you in a particular occupation. And then the third step is you applying for that 482 visa. So it's certainly something that we're working in conjunction closely with employers as well as you as the applicant. Again, processing times do seem to be slowing due to the fact that the demand is exceeding the supply. But I think that, as I said earlier, it means as soon as you are ready, then it's good to get in the queue and get things moving. Okay, so what now? People looking to move to Australia. Most people initially consider the points-tested skilled migration visas. And I'm not sure what people do know about this, but I'm going to run through it briefly to give you an idea. The points test, you need a minimum of 65 points to be able to apply, and you're allocated points based on your age, and there's differing points allocated there, but you do have to be under 45 years to even be able to apply for skilled migration, so that's a very important deadline. You also score points for your qualifications, your English language ability, your work experience. If you have a partner, you can score partner points. So that's quite an important assessment that we would work through with you to see what your points are, and again, what your nominated occupation would be, to give you an idea of the types of points you really are going to need. I've printed out here. There was an invitation round where 10,000 invitations were sent out on the 4th of June this year. And what that means for people who aren't aware, is in this process you first submit an expression of interest, or an EOI, which is not a visa application. It's just an expression of interest where you lay out your points and then you wait to be invited by the Department of Home Affairs to actually apply for the visa. So there are certain steps you do in preparation for that EOI, but you can't just go ahead and apply for these visas. You have to be invited. Now, to give you an idea, they had an air conditioning and mechanical services plumber in June, needed 65 points. Strangely enough, an air conditioning and refrigeration mechanic needed 80 points. Bricklayers 65, carpenters 65, electricians 65. Then looking at engineers, they range from sort of 80 to 95 points. A fitter or a fitter and turner both needed 80 points. There are a lot of health occupations that range from 65 points and higher. Let me see if I can find an occupational therapist, for example, needed 75 points. Let's go through this to see if there's any other. Registered nurses actually needed 75 in the last last invitation round. Secondary school teacher 75, a social worker 75, a veterinarian 80 points, a welder also 80 points. So it really comes down to then there's a couple of issues you've got to look at. They look at the points for each occupation and also the number of people that are applying. And it's really important to maximize your points because they take the people with the best points. So you may well have 80 points, but if there are a lot of people who've got 85 and above, they're going to receive the invitations before you do. So it's really important that if there are ways that you can get extra points, that you certainly undertake that to maximize the chance of you receiving an invitation, because it really is in your interest to do anything you can to get more points. And to give you an idea of something that's also changed is that the Department of Home Affairs has reduced the quotas that they used to provide for the state-nominated visas, the 190 visas. So there's fewer 190s out there in the system. And so again, it's getting even more competitive. But it's still something to consider because the states are keen to attract you. And this is something that we could discuss with you if you were to work with us for an eligibility assessment. But certainly I think the last point there on the slide is relevant, is that we are seeing a broader range of occupations invited. We are seeing lower points being invited. So I think that we are finally starting to throw off the shackles from COVID, and things are looking more positive. It's very competitive still, but I do think now that skilled migration is slowly moving back to what it was, and I think that's a real bonus for Australia because I think we need a range of occupations rather than a very narrow handful of occupations to get the full benefit from the migration program. Okay, let's move on. Okay, let's have a little chat now about pathways to permanent residence. To say straight away, the 189, the 190 visa, they are applications for permanent residence, but let's run through this in terms of how employer-sponsored really works, because more and more people are going down this pathway. Now, it may well be harder to secure a job offer when you're overseas, but if you can, it certainly gives you more options and maybe a little bit more control over the process. Because if you have that job offer from an Australian employer, you're not sitting in a pool of EOIs waiting for an invitation. You can straight ahead apply for a visa, and that gives you a bit more, confidence about the process, and as I said, a bit more control over it, because that, for us, sometimes with the OIs, it can be very difficult to estimate the time frame between submitting an EOI and when will you receive the invitation, where with lodging a 482 visa application, we proceed straight away and do that. So that's something important to think once you can get the job offer. Okay, let's. Partner visas and parent visas are something we've been doing for 29 to 30 years. Family reunion is still important in Australia, and will continue to be that way. Partner visas processing times are very up and down, but at the moment it's not too bad, but can still be 12 months or so, where parent visas, the processing times are quite long, and there can be very different options for you depending on if you lodge an application in Australia or outside Australia. And you can only lodge an application for a parent visa in Australia if you meet the definition of what's called an aged parent, and that's someone who is eligible for the pension in Australia, and currently that's at least 67 years of age, because it can open up some different options for you if you are able to lodge in Australia. And again, skilled migration, as I mentioned, it is permanent residence straight away, rather than it's like the employer sponsored as a two-step process. Skilled migration straight off the bat. And that's also attractive for employers too, because when you arrive in Australia, you've got full work rights. You're ready to go. You don't have to be sponsored, and that is appealing. And it does make you more attractive to Australian employers. So skilled migrations is historically has been a really good pathway for people to move to Australia and have the ability to start work straight away. There's another visa called the National Innovation Visa, and this used to be called the Global Talent Visa, and this is it is a pathway to permanent residence, but it's quite limited. They only offer 3,000 places per year, and it's really for high achievers. And at the moment, the government is in fact struggling to even fill the 3,000 places because the criteria is very hard to meet. But we have successfully done quite a few of these. So if you are that person who is a high achiever, then we're very happy to discuss that with you and look at your options, because the National Innovation Visa is also permanent residence straight away, and allows you to come to Australia and start working in Australia. Okay, again, reiterating what I said earlier, Australia needs skilled migrants. Our current unemployment rate is 4.4%, and skill shortages are a reality. Our office here in Sydney, we process 482 work permits all day, every day, and it is something that's really important to Australia. So it is, again, the job offer route is something to consider. If you are looking at that, it's important to approach employers in Australia as well as network with useful people. That's be it company contacts and recruiters. We're also happy to chat to you about our network and how we can help you there. And also what's important is, if you're going to start looking for that and start talking to employers, be job ready. And by that I mean, sit an English language test, so you can show your capability there. Have good employment references that can help an Australian employer understand your experience from overseas. And certain occupations for 482 visas, it's mandatory for them to get a skills assessment done. It's mainly trade occupations, but it is mandatory to apply for the visa. So it's a good idea to get that done, not only for the visa, but also to show the Australian employer that you do have the skill level required to do that work. So there's certainly things that you can be doing in preparation while you are looking for a job offer in Australia as well. Okay, now I've done quite a bit of talking, but I would like to chat to you a little bit more about what working with Four Corners looks like, and also some of the benefits involved in that, and then we'll really open it up to questions. I do know that we did have people who've sent through questions when they registered. We'll certainly read out and talk about some of them now. If you do have any questions that if you haven't put them in the Q&A box, do that now, and we're happy to chat about it. But working with Four Corners, I think mainly it simplifies the visa application process. It makes sure you get it right, and it avoids delays. We offer you one point of contact and source of information, as well as ongoing updates for your application. We've helped tens of thousands of people over the year go through this process. A lot of our staff have been through this process, so from both a professional and a personal perspective, they understand what you're going through or what you're considering. They understand the stresses that you can be under as well, and we look, as I said, to smooth that for you. We're in constant contact with the department. Any changes that are coming through, we can certainly let you know as early as possible. And also, I think having the perspective of an office in South Africa as well as in Australia, it's two different ways to look at it, and two different ways to provide a service or a solution to you. And we do have many cases where clients of ours start working with our South African office and then start working with the Australian office, and we really enjoy that. I certainly enjoy. The other day I got an email from someone who we got their skilled migration back in 2002, and luckily our database goes back that far, so I could go and have a look at their record. But they were emailed us hoping we were still around and wanting to introduce one of their family members to us, and that's what we really like. We get a lot of work through referrals, and that makes us happy because it means our clients are happy, and that's really our main focus is to provide a good service and to smooth this process and to help people settle in Australia. I think it's also important that we're managing your expectations, giving you realistic expectations about this. As I said earlier, it's a huge step you're considering, and one the whole family has to be ready for. But once you make that decision, we are certainly available to make it happen, so to speak. And I think our experience really does play into it. We've seen lots of changes, lots of different rules, and it means that we certainly can find a solution for you. Okay, as I said earlier, I might hand it over to Paola to see if we do have any questions, and then we can start talking about those and just answering them.
Yeah, great. Matthew, Patrick was first off the bat.
Okay.
He has asked, can I do mutual recognition after registering with the New Zealand Teaching Council as a teacher?
Certainly for between Australia and New Zealand, there is a lot of mutual recognition. It will, though, still come down to your base qualification and experience. Australia will look at that, but in a lot of occupations, yes, you can make your life easier by already being registered with New Zealand, and then it makes it an easier process to then become registered with Australia. But it does just depend on exactly on your base qualification, though.
Correct. And I'd also add, Matthew, that it also depends on whether Patrick is thinking about skilled migration or a work visa as well.
Yeah.
That would also
Yes.
differ.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there's no other questions right now live on the chat. So if anyone has questions, please put them in because I'm busy reading them. In terms of certain questions that were asked while people were registering, I think we could touch on some of those. So, for example, somebody asked, can family be included in visa applications? Which is obviously a valid question.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Family can be included, whether it's a temporary residence or a permanent residence application. So yeah, there's no problem with that. Sometimes with employer-sponsored visas, your employer has to agree to that, but from a purely immigration perspective, certainly no problem at all. That's the whole point, I think, is for the whole family to come. So yes, you that's what we normally see is families moving together.
Family units. Okay, great. John has written a question here. He's asked, for a British citizen working in IT, 47 years of age, his wife, 40 years with HR experience, what are the chances? So this obviously touches on the age cutoff, the 45. Yeah, but if you wanted to answer that.
Well, look, certainly, if one thing to say is, if we approach this in two ways, for skilled migration, John wouldn't be able to apply without being blunt. You do have to be under 45, but we certainly could look at your wife's qualification and work experience and see if she becomes what's called the principal or main applicant. So that's something I didn't mention. When you're a couple, we look at both of you and we choose who's going to be the best person to apply or the most likely to be approved. So that's something that, John, if you did want to contact Paola for an assessment, we could look at your wife's situation. The other side, I guess, to your question is for the 482 visa, which is the temporary residence work permit, there's no age limit for that. So that's something else that's relevant. There is though generally still that 45 age cutoff for permanent residents, but there are some exemptions to that as well, based generally around salary. But that's something that you could discuss with Paola as well, if you did want to have an eligibility assessment after the webinar.
Just touching on that, I see John has said that his company that he works for has actually a branch in Sydney and in Perth. And if he was to get an invitation from the company, would he have a chance? So that's
Yeah,
obviously a
look,
positive one.
that's a great place to start, John, if you have got that. And so yes, so the answer is yes, you could go, but I think what we try to do with our clients is we discuss with you not just getting a 482 visa for up to 4 years, but what's your pathway to permanent residence as well? Because most of the people we get 482 visas for, they want to stay permanently. So we do need to discuss that as well. So the answer is yes. That's great news that your company has offices there and there's potentially a job offer. But you'd also have to think about, am I happy to go just for 4 years and then return back home, or do I want to know what my permanent residence options are as well?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay. The next question is actually from David, and it also touches on the family unit. He's in the process of getting a 482 Dharma in Perth as a truck driver, and he has 3 children that are 18, 20, and 21. They all live at home and they're on apprenticeships. He is asking, could they be included in his visa?
Well, look, we'd probably go into more detail before 100% answering that question if we were talking to a client, but I can give you some general information. Certainly, once children turn 18, they're not automatically seen as a dependent. You do need to prove that they are still a member of your family unit. And generally, if someone is a full-time student or an apprentice and they're living at home, you can satisfy that generally, but we'd have to look at it. The key thing that you've got to think about is when a child turns 23, they cannot be included on your application. So that's a real cutoff. Also, what you might experience is that when you are granted a 4-year visa, your 21-year-old child may only get a 2-year visa because they get the visa up until the day before the 23rd birthday. So that's important to think about because we've helped a few truck drivers come over as well under different dharmas, and to get permanent residence, you generally have to work for the employer for 3 years, and then your eldest child is not going to have a visa at that point and able to be included in the application. So it's something that, if you were working with us, we'd discuss with you very carefully so that you understand the implications of or the impact of, do we create a plan for that eldest child? If you said they're doing an apprentice, trades are really wanted here in Australia, so there might be an independent pathway for that child. But again, this is what I'm talking about, is setting expectations properly, letting you know exactly where you stand from the beginning. So yes, where you stand today, yes, you can include your kids, but certainly there'll be some issues about when they turn 23, the length of their 482 visa and permanent residence. So again, that's something to discuss.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Matthew. There's quite a detailed question here from Suraj. So I'm just going to touch on it. I don't, obviously we can't be given direct proper advice kind of on this platform, but I thought we can touch on it. Suraj is an offshore ICT project manager, 18 years of experience. He's got a positive skills assessment already, which is great, and 75 points. And so they're asking, based on the current 2026, 27 migration settings, would we recommend continuing to wait for skill migration invitations or to change focus and look rather at work visas? Matthew, what's your opinion on that?
Look, that's actually a really good question,
Yeah.
because what we find with our clients, the longer they might sit in the pool waiting for an invitation, they start getting getting itchy feet, and what else can we do?
Jumpy.
Yeah, a bit jumpy. I think, Siraj, at this stage, you can look at both avenues, because if your invitation comes through and you apply for skilled migration, fantastic. If you get a job offer and get sponsored on a 482 visa, also fantastic. And we've got lots of clients who are in Australia on a 482. They've got an EOI submitted and they're waiting. And let's even talk about a worst case scenario. Let's say they don't get an invitation, but because they're here on a 482, they've got the other alternative pathway to PR from employer sponsorship. So I would say don't close doors, let's open doors. I think you can have more options rather than less. And you could submit an EOI as well as look at employer sponsored options.
That's great. Okay. There are no other further questions here on the chat. Suraj and David, so thank you. I thought we'd talk a little bit about questions that were submitted while people were registering. Um, for example, here's one, and I get asked this a lot. How much money does a person need to have in their bank account for a skilled or a work visa?
Okay, yeah, I think
Mm.
I've been asked that a fair bit as well. There is no set minimum, is the answer. Um, Particularly with employer-sponsored visas, the Department of Home Affairs knows you're going to be arriving and starting work, so there will be some income. With skilled migration, I think it's more a case of you doing some budgeting, and thinking about, okay, I'm going to arrive, I'm going to, need somewhere to stay, I'm going to, how much time should I allocate to securing a job offer? I'll then need to, have savings to cover that period. And so rather than you need to have it to get the visa, so it's not a visa requirement, it's more a personal issue to consider, because when you've got to buy flight tickets to come here, and that could be an individual or a family, and then you've got to settle. There could be kids going to school. There's a lot. Let's not dress it
Mm.
up. When you first arrive, it can be a bit overwhelming. So I think that it's important that you do some budgeting, but you don't need to have a minimum amount for the visa. It's more to make sure that you're okay when you first arrive and you're getting settled.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Matthew. Um, Next question is there an age limit on work visas?
Well, as I said earlier, no, there's not.
Mm.
But that's just for the temporary residence subclass 482 visa. You really can be any age and have that visa. It's just more complicated when it comes to wanting to apply for permanent residence, and then you do the standard is still under 45, but there are some exemptions to that depending on your occupation. So, for example, there doctors and university lecturers get exemptions. New Zealand citizens get exemptions, and other people that they're relying on if you are paid at a higher salary level, then you can get an age exemption. So for me, that's something I always want to discuss with clients before they even come on the 482. So if their salary is never going to be at that higher level, then they're like, okay, I'm coming for 4 years and that's that. And at least they understand it rather than it's something they discover when they get here.
Yeah, very true. Um, right, there were actually a few people who had been asking about the fact that they have siblings in Australia and that pretty much everyone is living in Australia and they are on their own in their home country. So I think maybe we can just quickly touch on the last remaining relative visa.
Okay. Well, well, before we chat about the last remaining relative, years ago, and I am talking quite a few years ago now, in skilled migration, there used to be points allocated for having family in Australia.
Mm.
Other than under the 491 visa, that's not the case anymore. So if you're moving to Perth or Melbourne or Sydney, you're not getting any points, even if all your brothers and sisters are there, for example. Um, and we can talk about whether that makes sense or not, and does family increase your ability to settle? Well, that's what the rules are currently. Now, there is a visa, as Paola mentioned, called the last remaining relative, and it literally is that. So, for example, if you are married and your partner has their whole family, that's going to exclude you from that type of application. So generally is for single people, and it's also one of those visa classes that are capped. And what I mean by that is that the Australian government limits the number of visas they will issue each year. Parent visas are another example of a subclass that is capped. And so a last remaining relative visa currently could take 30 or more years to be finalised. So it is technically possible, but it's going to take a very long time. And I would say it might be worth considering other options if you have them. If you don't, certainly you could look at that. But I think it would be wise to check all your other options, because that might give you something sooner than waiting for 30 years, because although the visa does exist, it's quite a frustrating process.
Yep. Okay, good, Matthew. Let me just look at this other one. Someone is asking about parent visas. I know it's quite a broad question. How often are these applications rejected?
Wow. Okay. Luckily for us, hardly ever. I can't remember when we last had a parent visa rejected. There's a couple of things you got to remember with parent visas, and the first one is what's called balance of family. And that means essentially that you've got an equal or greater number of children in Australia than outside Australia. But it is a little bit more complicated on that, depending on where your kids are living. And again, that's something that if you did want to talk about, Paola is certainly well placed to chat to you about that. So that's the first thing. If someone's lodged an application and they thought they met the balance of family, but they didn't, because what also happens with balance of family, and you see this with people who have got divorced or their partner has passed away and they've remarried. So now you've got kids, your own kids, plus the new partner has kids. And you've got to work it out involving all of these things. So that's one area. But if we were doing it, that's the first thing we'd look at, is making sure you met the balance of family. But that's an area that, in complicated situations can be complicated. Other areas generally would be if there was a medical issue, if that and the parent was unable to pass the medical, that can be a reason for a refusal. But generally, that balance of family is the main criteria that you're looking to meet for a parent visa. There's also what's known as someone has to be their assurer and provide an assurance of support, and that means that that person is living in Australia. It doesn't have to be your sponsor, which is the child in Australia. It could be anyone in Australia, but it means that they have to show that they are that they are working in Australia, and they are able to offer support if needed, for the parent visa once it's granted the applicant. So if you don't have anyone who can be the assurer, that could be another reason. So there's not actually many places where it could go wrong. There's also character. If someone has a criminal record, that could be an issue. Not all criminal records will preclude you from applying. In fact, I remember, and I won't mention any names, a client many years ago who a couple came in, they did apply for a parent visa, and then he came back the next day and started to talk to me about his criminal record that he had never told his wife or his family about, and so we had to sort of talk him through that. We got them the visa, but it was interesting what comes out from these eligibility assessments. The main
Mm.
thing is, at this stage, if you're talking to us, let's get it all out in the open. I mean, we're working
Yeah.
with you, and to be able to advise you properly, we have to have all the information. But yeah, they'd be the areas where potentially it could go wrong. But they're also areas that we should be able to highlight early on and help you make a decision whether or not you want to proceed.
Yeah, very true. Um, Matthew, one or two last questions. Path to Australian citizenship.
Okay, well, let's briefly chat about that. Generally, for Australian citizenship, excuse me, sorry, I'm just going to drink some water. Generally, you have to live in Australia for 4 years, and at least one of those 4 years as a permanent resident. So what that means is you could have 3 years on a 482 visa and then 1 year as a permanent resident, and then you'd be eligible for citizenship. Or if you came over on a 189 visa, for example, all your 4 years would be as a permanent resident. It doesn't mean you can never leave Australia in those 4 years. In the last 12 months before you apply for citizenship, you can't spend more than 90 days outside of Australia, but certainly having holidays and those sorts of things are fine. So that's the pathway to citizenship. Another thing to consider there is are you going to retain your existing citizenship? Does your country allow you to have dual citizenship? So all of those things are important questions. Excuse me.
Matthew, I think we should also note that we also assist people with citizenship applications. We've also done thousands of those as well, and it's
Yeah,
also
it is.
a reason to celebrate as well.
Yeah, it's a nice end to the journey for us when we've helped people move and then finally become citizens. So, pardon me. Yeah, it's great when we can do that, and it's always nice when clients send us photographs of the citizenship ceremony,
Yeah,
and that they're always quite excited that this big step they've taken has actually worked out.
very much so. I think yeah, we're getting close to an hour. I think we can just touch on the kind of the wide oh, I don't know what I'm thinking of platter. Like the wide options for working holiday visas that unfortunately aren't really eligible for us here in South Africa. A lot of other African countries, but that we've actually helped many people who yeah, who want to go and live and work in Australia, not necessarily for long term, but that is an actual nice viable route for many young people
Yeah,
from
look,
all
certainly.
around. Mm.
Working holiday visas for most countries is up to 31 years of age. Some countries up to 35. Um, and Australia, you see a lot of people here on working holiday visas, and in fact, we've helped people not only get working holiday visas, or people have got that themselves, and then we've helped them get a 482 visa, then we've helped them get permanent residence. So it is actually a real stepping stone to staying, because a lot of well, they're known as backpackers here, come out on working holiday visas. They love it. They decide they want to stay, or they meet an Australian that they like, and so then it opens up other visa options for them. So definitely, one thing Australia really noticed during COVID, when the borders were closed, the working holiday visas couldn't come, and so that that sort of funnel of workers, skilled and unskilled, didn't get to Australia. So, and we really noticed it. Employers really did. So yeah. So it really is something that you know. There are a lot of countries, UK, Ireland, countries in Europe that are eligible for that type of application. There's also the 462 visa, which is the work and holiday visa, which has a different list of countries that are eligible for it. And I know a number of people in South Africa also hold UK or Dutch passports, and then it can open up.
Portuguese.
It can open up that option for them. So yeah, I think it's a great way for. Well, firstly, I think simply young people to come and check out Australia and have some fun. And then for those who really like it, there often can then be ways to move to the next stage to stay longer.
Hey, Matthew, in the chat, I've added a link to our assessment form.
Excellent, great.
There was, Sine was asking quite a very detailed question about New Zealand work visa cancellation and how that can mesh with Australia. So I've actually just put in my email address so they can just email us directly and we can discuss that kind of in a more private manner. But yeah, I think we've touched on pretty much a lot of the topics that we wanted to discuss.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks, Paola. Well, thank you everyone who has attended. If you do have any more questions, you've got Paola's email address. You've got the link to the eligibility assessment as well, and then we'd certainly be able to advise you on what your options are. We'd love to be a part of your move to Australia. But the first step is to get that eligibility assessment and make sure that you can do what you want to do. And then if you can, what's the best way to do it? So thank you again for joining our webinar. You will receive a copy of this in an email as well. So if you want to watch it back, you will be able to do that. And also, if you have any questions, please take a note of Paola's email address and send questions through, and we look forward to helping you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.